you have some restaurants that close, you have the ones that continue to shine.
Yeah.
Is there, over the last 10 years, you guys have self-financed this. That's amazing. But there's stuff, as you mentioned, that are out of your control. Pandemic hits, COVID-19.
Did you hear that? Did you hear the exhale out there, everybody? That was my COVID exhale. It's where I have to do every time I hear it and think about it because it was painful. For me personally, especially, March 14th of 2020, my mom passed away. March 15th of 2020, they shut down all the restaurants. So I was having a crisis within a crisis. The best thing that happened to me during that time was the fact that 17 of us jumped on a phone call to start the Independent Restaurant Coalition, and it became like a support group. At times we had 300 operators on our Zoom calls. We eventually got $28.6 billion in funding through the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, which we initiated with some great help from Earl Blumenauer and was part of the CARES Act. But that was our whole purpose in getting in there, was first shaping PPP, and then after that starting a fund for restaurants. But we were on the phone together every morning, sometimes 4 hours a day for 12, 15 months. So I looked at those faces, Robert St. John and Katie Button and Will Guidera and Donnie Medea and Ivy Mix and Ashley Christensen, Michael Shemtoff. I looked at these people every day. We were all fighting through it. And in the restaurants, we have pre-shift. We get up and we tell stories or taste food or talk about guests who are coming in before the shift every night. Those days were about post-shift. And all of us getting on there and talking about our fears and where we were, and we're down to this much money and we think we're going to go out of business. And people talked about, I remember Donnie being on there, crying, talking about closing Blackbird. It was a time where there was a lot of laughter and a lot of tears, even some yelling at times. I mean, we were in a foxhole together, and those people will be friends for life. But navigating through all that, we had restaurants where we paid $1 million a year in rent that we didn't get a break on. And we had to go to our banks, and we lit up a line of credit that was a dangerous and scary number. And I got into one of the worst spots in my life. I talked a little bit before about being a manic depressive my whole life. Probably the darkest moment of my life was in late 2020 in California, just by myself. And it was without having the thing that had sustained me for so long. And there was just so much consternation and anger in the world, and it wreaked havoc on my psyche, as I think it did for a lot of people. I know it was bad for a lot of people's psyche. I'm not special in that case. I had to scratch and crawl to get through it.
Yeah.
Just like a lot of people did.
March 14th, you said you lose your mother.
Yeah.
And then obviously we see, was it a couple days later, Trump announced they're banning travel, and we see the trend of,
Pritzker shut down restaurants from being open on March 16th. So March 14th, she passed away. We couldn't have a funeral. March 15th, I went to my restaurant, Springfield, Illinois, that I opened, that she opened with me and helped me. And her paintings were on the wall. I had asked her to paint these blue dogs on the wall. And so I was like, well, we can't have a funeral, so let's go to Indigo because we'll be surrounded by our paintings. So we go and we sit down at a table, and the new owners come by the table and they say, hey, we're so sorry about your mom. And he goes, tell me a story about the blue dogs again. And I was like, well, I'd seen Rodriguez Blue Dogs in New Orleans. And I was like, Mom, will you paint me copies of these? And she painted one perfectly. And I said, give me 17 of them. So they were everywhere. And he goes, what was your favorite one? I said, that one right there in the field of poppies. It was this huge painting. And the new owner went and he grabbed it off the wall. And he goes, well, it's going home with you guys tonight. And he gave me the painting. And so that was a moment in my life where I probably needed hospitality the most and got it. just at the right time. And that hangs in my house now, so it's pretty special.
Yeah, that's a powerful painting. I mean, Kevin, I think this is for me the more fascinating part of chatting with you, because the story about Girl and the Goat's awesome. The millions, the revenue, where you guys are at now, but the reality is, it's these life-defining moments that you have. I mean, you not only lose your mother, which I'm sure was one of the toughest things ever in your life. Boca Group was big enough where you have responsibility for these employees. People have mortgages, people have health insurance, I'm sure.
Yes.
How do you manage, like, the world's shutting down? We've never seen a crisis like this. It's different than '08 because it's a different reasoning.
Yes.
Was Boca at any point at the brink of bankruptcy?
No, but so going back to the very beginning, though, when we shut down all the restaurants, so we said we extended everybody's health coverage throughout the entirety. We never shut that off. We also, at the very beginning, were just like, who has needs right now that might not get met? And we were just on Amazon sending people things that they might need. It was only like a group of like 8 of us that were still working. And then, Rob and I donated $200,000 to a relief fund. And we then started raising money from our guests to put in that relief fund as well. And then we had people who could fill out stuff and say, I need money for relief. And then we were sending out checks. And so that was the triage in the beginning to try to get people through. And then we set up at 3 different of our restaurants, places that people could pick up food once a week. And so it was really, that was all going on. At the same time, we just watched this line of credit getting lit up. And we're just like, what if this whole PPP thing doesn't work? Or if we don't get it? I don't want to say the brink because there were too many unknowns, but there was a certain point where, like, if we don't get PPP, we're in big trouble. And so I had to just start thinking in my own mind, okay, I'll be okay. What are we going to do here? Okay, this is what we'll do. All right. I'll work at that family video that's out there, in Michigan, or whatever. I mean, I started thinking of some crazy stuff, well, maybe we'll move to the country and, are restaurants ever going to come back? I mean, people kept saying that. So it gets in your head. Like when I was sitting and just thinking rational, I would just be like, restaurants are coming back. They're coming back. As long as people are attracted to people, there's going to be restaurants. People want to go out and see people and be with people and talk with people. But there would be every single day, like, restaurants will never be the same. Nobody's coming back to restaurants. And
every day on the news.
Every day on the news. And you would be like, shut up, man. Stop saying that. The takeout was a drop in the bucket. It was, restaurants, we weren't a hardware store. My inventory was not still sitting on the shelves. Yeah. We'd have to go every time they shut us down, throw out all the food, freeze what you can, throw everything else out. Here we go again. It was a complete and total disaster. But, fortunately, between PPP and the RRF, which we got a little bit of, brought us back to life. There were people that weren't lucky enough to get it and figure it out. 100,000 restaurants closed. There were 500,000 independent restaurants and 100,000 of them closed.
Wow. And you mentioned this was the darkest point in your life, correct?
Yep. I have two moments that are close. One was after Nashville closing. And that was Halloween 2002 and late 2020 during the pandemic.